It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Now we can get into strategy. And what I mean by step 2 in strategy is that your army of dollar bills, they definitely have a plan of action. They're feeling purposeful. They're not feeling like you're wasting their efforts through opportunity costs. You're actually maximizing every dollar. You're a good field general for your army of dollar bills.
And so we were thinking about, as we think about stability, that's kind of like surviving. Stability is kind of like making sure that I can survive. Strategy is that point where you actually have a plan in place. Yep. And you know that you're making the decisions to work towards that plan. You aren't just letting life happen to you. You know where you want to ultimately go financially, and you understand the steps necessary to move you in that direction, and you've actually plotted out that course.
Well, I'm sitting there going, yeah. But how many people are actually doing this? Because when I've seen the stats, unfortunately, as we did show prep, guys, if you thought it was bad that if you have $1,000, you're already in the top 40% of Americans, wait until you see how few of your peers are actually saving for the future. This is the part that ought to freak you out, because realize if you're in your 20s or 30s or even 40s, you look around and you go, man, I get it. Life is tough. You got a lot of things, a lot of distractions, a lot of things that are pulling at your back pocket. But imagine yourself, if you want to scare yourself into action, think about your 50-year-old self with these stats that we're about to show you, and I want you to take action after you see this stuff.
So if you've listened to us for any period of time, you know that we say part of the financial order of operations, part of being a financial mutant is you want to be moving towards saving 20 to 25% of your income. That should be how you know that you're setting yourself apart. But when we look at actual savings rates, and this is from Bankrate.com, this is how much do Americans save. Now, this isn't just retirement savings. This is all savings. This talks about like putting money in savings accounts, so on and so forth. And this is what we found. 5% of folks say they don't know. Well, I don't know what I'm saving. I have no idea. If you don't know what you're saving,
that's probably not going to be the hyper savers. That's probably going to be falling closer to nothing. That's the embarrassed ones that don't want to answer the question.
There's about 21% of folks say they save nothing. They're just living paycheck to paycheck, day to day. About 20% say they save 5% or less. About 28% of the population says they save between 6 to 10%. About 10% say they save between 11 to 15%. And only 16% of those surveyed said that they save over 15%.
So did you hear this? Guys, a lot of you guys, if you just are funding your Roth IRAs, doing your employer match, getting that match, you're probably better than 84% of Americans out there. So I want you to know, hear me out. The sooner you can start saving 20 to 25%, I promise you, your older self is going to get sloppy happy with you down the road. I mean, it's true. I mean, I will tell you on this journey that I have, and that's why we're talking about the levels of wealth. I want to tell you the experience, the wisdom you're supposed to build. The younger you start, and we talk about it all the time, 88 times over. There's a reason this bad joke here. By the way, this is somebody who's retiring at 66, not 65. So they started saving at 21. $1 could turn into 88 by the time they retire. Guys, that's not just a cool slogan. We believe it. We know what value every dollar you have. So don't, I make a joke on beer, but think about the fact that if you could put the maximum into your Roth IRA, multiply that by 88, and I think you can see very quickly, or think about your car payment. What if you did make a bad decision and you have a $600 a month car payment? What if each dollar of that car payment could be going towards retirement and it's worth 88 times? Think about these things, guys, because it's very important that you let your money actually do some of the work for you.
Now, I think one of the things that's interesting, right, because we're talking about strategy here. We just uncovered that only 16% of Americans save more than 15% of our income. But you remember, one of the things that it said is, hey, this isn't just retirement savings. This is like people saving in cash. So let's suppose you are one of those folks that is like, I'm saving. I'm not a 5%, I don't know. I'm saving. I'm doing something. It is important. If you really want to grasp the 88 times over concept, you do need to kind of understand the difference in saving versus investing, the difference in letting your dollars work for you and not letting your dollars work for you. And Brian, I've heard you tell this story over and over and over, but I think it's so beautiful. I think it's so poignant and so powerful as to why that makes a difference.
Well, and I think, because I want to show this. We're going to talk about a period from 1985 to 2000. And people are like, why 1985 to 2000? That seems like a unique period. I've talked about this on the show, but we're always picking up new subscribers, new Money Guy family members. My parents, guys, you remember what I talked about with wealth creation? There's 3 primary components. There's the discipline, meaning you live below what you make. That creates margin, which is money.
Yep.
I mean, and that money, if you do it right, you put it to work, and it has time to grow and turn into something. Yeah. My parents were so good at saving money. They were disciplined. I grew up in a household where we knew the value of $1. The problem was my parents didn't understand the difference between saving money and investing money, because you have to finish the drill. You not only have to save the money, take the margins, take the discipline, but you have to take the money and put it to work for you in your army of dollar bills. My in-laws, also good with money. I'm not taking anything away from my in-laws.
Perhaps not even as disciplined as your parents were.
But they probably weren't as tight as my parents were. The difference was, instead of my parents, whose only known investments were CDs, my in-laws bought the Fidelity Magellan Fund back when owning the Fidelity Magellan Fund, that's where you wanted to be. So here's the thing. We had Daniel calculate this out for us. And I'm going to tell you, it's pretty shocking. I can't remember if he puts these up individually.
That's right. It's going to come up together.
But I'm going to go ahead and just tell you, because here's the challenge. Cash, my parents' CD rates during this, because this is also a very teachable moment for you guys going forward too. We calculate out 5.75% annualized performance.
I'm going to say that again because it sounds so remarkable in today's day and age. If you look at the average one-year CD rates from 1985 to 2000, it annualized 5.75%. Brian, how quickly would you open up a savings account right now for like 5.75%?
I mean, I'm just so depressed that you can't make 1% on money,
like
it seems like.
0.75% you do a flip right now.
But here's the thing we talk about. Before you unveil the numbers there, buddy, we talk about this all the time, because I remember people, if you go look at the historical performance of the early 80s, they're like, man, do you realize that CD rates got into double-digit territory? Man, if I could lock that in for 30 years, I'd have done it. I'd have been said. Like, no, you wouldn't have. Because if you could have seen what the equity markets were doing during the same time, you'd have been ticked. Because there's usually, historically, what's called an equity risk premium, meaning that whatever's going on with interest rates, that risk that you're taking is creating usually a premium, a spread of better performance for you rewarding you for taking that risk. And we're about to show you the difference between saving money in a CD and then investing the money into a mutual fund.
So in our case study, we just said, let's take 2 individuals, and in 1985, let's have them drop in $50,000. And one of them is going to put it in one-year CDs, and the other is going to put it in the Fidelity Magellan Fund. Well, what we found is by the time we got to the year 2000, the CD investor had turned $50,000 into just over $118,000. Again, that's a 5.75% annualized rate of return. That doesn't sound bad until you look at the context of the person that was investing in that Fidelity Magellan Fund. They put in $50,000 just at the beginning, didn't save any more, and that $50,000 turned into over $835,000.
So I know that seems like a big deal, because that is annualized. That's a pretty good rate of return. I think it works out to be over 18 to 20%. But here's the thing, guys, you can do this too. You can put your money to work. There's always going to be usually a premium that you'll be rewarded for taking that risk, especially if you're long term. Remember, anything you need in the next 3 years needs to be in cash. 3 to 5 years still needs to be somewhat safe, but anything over 5 to 7 years, you can invest that. You don't need to worry about the volatility in the short term, because you're thinking more long term. And that's a very valuable thing, because the most important thing you can do at the beginning of your journey, focus on your savings rate and then putting that money to work. And a lot of you guys are like, this is outstanding, but what do you put it in? That Fidelity Magellan Fund? Is that where I should go? No,
that's not
Here's what we want you to focus on. Focus on the savings rate is so much more important than your initial rate of return, because that's just going to happen. Don't get yourself caught up with all the, do I do large cap, international, small cap? That's all noise, because you're focusing on the savings and then turning that into an investment. Here's what I want you to consider doing. Do some research and due diligence on an index Target Retirement Fund. You can go look at Fidelity. You can go look at Vanguard. They both have good products. That's not an endorsement. I'm telling you, go do it. Due diligence. Do your own research. But these things are low cost, and they'll just do what the market does. And that's going to be a big head start from a lot of people who are trying to figure things out.
And what I love is if you are someone at the beginning of your journey, and like you said, you're trying to figure this out, there's really only two questions you need to focus on answering. How much can I save? And then when do I want to retire? If you can answer those two questions, then you can set yourself up for long-term investing success. And you don't have to go figure out what's the next Fidelity Magellan fund or which stock should I buy or which stocks that you should sell. And if you want a resource, we actually did a show a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was months ago. These are COVID years, so it's a little unique. But it was titled Become the World's Best Investor, where we actually walk you through how to think about investing, how to think about building a portfolio, what you ought to be thinking about, more importantly, when you ought to think about those things. Because you just said it, Brian, in the early stages, your savings rate is exponentially more important than your rate of return, and you should behave accordingly. So don't take your eyes off the ball when it comes to saving.
Yeah, and I mean, in this show, if you go check out this show, How to Become the World's Best Investor, we take in examples of why market timing is a fool's errand.
Yep.
I mean, because we show you, even if you hit things at bad times, you can still be tremendously successful. There's lots of case studies, lots of research. Do yourself a favor, go check that out, and I think you'll be well served on all the knowledge as well as insulating yourself from making bad decisions in the future.
The last sort of trap that I see often as it comes to the strategy stage, and I see this as someone, you get them excited early on about, hey, go max out your Roth IRA. And they'll say, awesome, cool, I'm going to save $500 a month into my Roth. I'm going to max it out at $6,000 a year. And then they never change it.
Yeah.
Now, when they were 21 years old, that was great. That was healthy savings. But now that they're 25, 27, 30, they're making more money, they've had more success, they have more discretionary income, you have to make sure that your savings also increases. So if your financial situation matures, so too should your savings behavior.
Yeah, you don't want the only thing increasing to be your lifestyle
That's
creep.
right.
Just because you're getting pay raises, you don't start rewarding yourself with the fancier car, the fancier house, without also making sure you're respecting the financial order of operation as well as what you're investing for the future.
So what are some ways that I know that I am doing the strategy stage well? Well, okay, step 4, you've already passed that. I have a full emergency fund. I've actually built up my emergency fund in step 4. In step 5, I've started thinking about Roth contributions, HSA contributions, ways to build up tax-free assets in the future. Step 6, I'm even thinking about maxing out my retirement options. My strategy is, if I'm not hitting those limits, if I'm not doing the full 19.5, I know that when I get my next pay raise, I'm going to make sure that I increase my savings. I'm going to make sure that I try to work towards that. And then maybe even I'm thinking now about hyperaccumulation. Am I not only building pre-tax dollars, but also tax-free dollars, and then maybe even those after-tax bridge dollars.
By the way, everything you said there, if you taken as a whole, it sounded like you just threw a ton at everybody. But here's the thing I would tell you that bridges this and makes this all so much easier. Guys, it is so easy these days to automate everything we have here on FOO Step 4, 5, 6, and 7.
That's exactly right.
And I love this through forced scarcity. What I've done is as my income has increased, all my automated savings goals are also increasing. So at the end of the month, we don't feel that much more successful than we did, and we're obviously building the army of dollar bills. This stuff is important. And if you want to know, how this all works out, how you have an accounting of how well you're doing with all this, make sure you're doing something like an annual net worth statement.
So true.
You've got to be tracking, what did I have at the beginning of the year? What do I have at the end of the year? So you can compare and contrast and see, what am I doing well with? What am I struggling? And making sure that your army of dollar bills actually are growing. And it's not that your debt's the only thing that's growing and your assets are kind of staying still, because that's stagnant and it's not going to serve you well in the long term.